Nobody walked into Han Ji-suk's tower uninvited. Nobody, except the girl in the paint-stained apron who shoved past 2 stunned guards on a Tuesday morning, slammed a crumpled eviction notice onto his desk, and said, "You have the wrong shop." The whole floor went silent. 40 stories above Seoul, men who negotiated in billions forgot how to breathe. Ji-suk looked up slowly from the paper and stopped. He knew her. 1 year, 52 weeks since the morning of Chairman Yu's funeral, when he'd wandered into a flower shop the size of a closet, and a girl with warm brown skin and flower-soft eyes had wrapped white chrysanthemums with her own hands. She hadn't recognized him. She'd refused his money. "Grief just means the love had somewhere to go," she'd said, and he had carried that sentence like a stone in his chest ever since. Now she was standing in his office, furious, alive, and clearly unaware she was yelling at the most dangerous man in the city. "Every tenant on that block took your payout," she went on, chin high. "I won't. My grandmother built that shop. I'd rather chain myself to the door." His second-in-command, Do-hyun, stepped forward. "Miss, you can't—" Ji-suk lifted one finger. Do-hyun stopped mid-word. The room noticed. She noticed. Her eyes flicked from the silenced man to the quiet one behind the desk, and something in her posture shifted. The first cold understanding of exactly whose building she had stormed. "You're him," she said. "Han Ji-suk." "And you're the florist." His voice stayed level, almost bored, though his pulse was anything but. "Zuri Hayes, 20, sole proprietor. 3 months behind on the corner unit your grandmother leased in 1994. Her breath caught. "You looked me up." "I look up everything I own." "You don't own me." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, more like a decision. He rose, buttoned his jacket, and crossed the room until the eviction notice lay between them, like a border he intended to erase. This close, she smelled like cut stems and cold morning air. This close, he could see she was trembling and refusing to show it. "The shop stays," he said. Zuri blinked. "What?" "One condition." He slid the notice off the desk and tore it in half without breaking her gaze. "I approve every arrangement that leaves your shop. Personally. Once a week." "Why would you—" She stared at him. "You run half this city. You want to inspect flowers?" "I want," Ji-suk said quietly, "to make sure my investment is in good hands." It wasn't the shop he meant, and somewhere beneath her outrage, some instinct in her knew it. She snatched the torn papers anyway. "Fine. Fridays. Don't be late." She walked out the way she'd come in. No bow, no fear, and every man on the floor turned to see their boss watching the door long after it closed. "Do-hyun," Ji-suk said, "move my Fridays." 6 Fridays in a row, the most feared man in Seoul had inspected roses, and today he was early. Zuri heard the car before she saw it. Everyone on the street did. Conversations died, shutters half lowered, and the black sedan slid to the curb outside her shop, like the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. She kept trimming stems and did not look up when the bell above the door rang. "You're 20 minutes early," she said. "The peonies aren't ready. You'll have to wait like a normal person." Behind her, Do-hyun made a small choking sound. In 6 years, no one had told Han Ji-suk to wait. Ji-suk waited. He'd learned the shop by now. The crooked shelf she refused to fix because her grandmother had built it crooked. the radio that only played one station, the way there was exactly enough room for two people if neither of them minded being close. He did not mind. He suspected she was starting not to mind either, and that suspicion had rearranged his entire week around a 15-minute appointment. Zuri set an arrangement on the counter between them. For the Jang wedding, approve them so I can get back to work. He didn't look at the flowers. He looked at her hands, the small cut on her thumb, the thorn scratch on her wrist. You're hurt. I work with roses. It happens. It shouldn't. He caught her wrist before she could pull away, turning it toward the light. His grip was gentle. His expression was not. The shop suddenly felt smaller than it had ever felt, and Zuri became very aware of how quiet it was, how close he stood, how his thumb rested over her pulse as if counting it. Mr. Han. Ji-suk. Mr. Han. She reclaimed her wrist, cheeks warm. You come here every Friday. You approve flowers you never look at. You bought out the vendor who overcharged me, and don't pretend you didn't. His prices dropped the day after I complained. What is this? For a long moment he said nothing. Down the street, his men waited by cars. Across the city, empires moved at his word. And here, in a flower shop that smelled like eucalyptus and rain-washed stems, Han Ji-suk stood with his hands in his pockets, like a man deciding how much truth she could survive. A year ago you gave me chrysanthemums, he said, and a sentence I haven't been able to put down since. Zuri went still. The funeral customer. The tall stranger with the ruined eyes who'd left without a word. Her memory reassembled him piece by piece and landed on the man in front of her. That was you. Every Friday, he said, moving to the door. I approve the flowers. Next week, wear gloves. The bell rang. The car pulled away. Zuri stood alone among her roses, heart hammering, holding a wrist that still remembered exactly where his thumb had been. The men in cheap suits made two mistakes that Thursday. They raised their voices at Zuri Hayes, and they did it on a street Han Ji-suk owned. There were three of them, crowding her little counter with a folder of yellowed papers. Baek Sang-chol sends his regards, the lead one said. Your grandmother borrowed from him in 2009. Interest compounds, Miss Hayes. You owe 40 million won, or you sign the shop over and we call it even. My grandmother paid her debts. Zuri's voice shook only a little. Every one. Not this one, he smiled, tapping the folder. Beck keeps excellent records. You have until Monday. They knocked over a bucket of tulips on the way out, deliberately. Zuri knelt in the spilled water, gathering broken stems with unsteady hands, and told herself she would not cry over flowers. She never called Ji-suk. She didn't have to. By sundown, the fruit vendor across the street had mentioned it to a man who mentioned it to Do-hyun, because the entire district understood something Zuri hadn't fully grasped yet. The flower shop on the corner was not to be touched. Friday morning, Baek Sang-chol was enjoying breakfast at his private club when the room emptied without explanation. Han Ji-suk took the seat across from him, unhurried, and set a folder of his own on the table. Sang-chol, you sent collectors to Hana Street. Beck's chopsticks paused. A legitimate debt. The old woman died owing nothing. Your papers are forged. My lawyers documented it overnight. Ji-suk poured himself tea he didn't drink. Here's what happens now. Your lending licenses are under review as of this morning. Your 2 buildings on the east side? The bank recalled the loans an hour ago. I own that bank. You'd burn my business over a flower shop? No. Ji-suk stood, buttoning his jacket. Over her. Come near Zuri Hayes again, and I won't use lawyers. Nod if you understand. Beck, gray-faced, nodded. That afternoon, the shop bell rang and Zuri looked up to find Ji-suk holding, absurdly, a replacement bucket of tulips. Behind him, a courier delivered an envelope, the forged debt, formally voided, with Beck Sang-chol's written apology. She read it twice. What did you do? Paperwork. Ji-suk. His name, finally his name, stopped him at the counter. Those men could come back. They won't. He said it the way other people said the sun would rise. Then, quieter, with something unguarded flickering through the calm. No one frightens you in this city. Not while I'm in it. I need you to know that. Zuri looked at this man who moved banks before breakfast, standing in her tiny shop holding tulips like an offering, and felt the ground shift somewhere beneath her ribs. Stay for tea, she heard herself say. For the first time in 6 Fridays, Han Ji-suk smiled, and stayed long past closing. The trouble with Daniel Osei was that he was perfect, and he knew it, and he brought coffee. He'd been coming to the shop for 3 weeks now. Architect, 30, easy smile, ordered arrangements for his firm's lobby and lingered afterward, making Zuri laugh with stories about buildings that almost fell down. This Friday he arrived at noon, set an iced Americano on her counter, and said, "Have dinner with me. Anywhere you want. I've been working up to this for 3 weeks." The bell above the door rang. Zuri would remember the temperature change for the rest of her life. How the whole shop seemed to drop 5 degrees as Han Ji-suk filled the doorway, gaze moving from the coffee to Daniel's elbow on her counter to Zuri's startled face. "You're early," she managed. "Apparently." His voice was polite, his eyes were not. Daniel, sensing nothing, extended a hand. "Daniel Osei, you a regular here too?" "Something like that." Ji-suk looked at the offered hand until Daniel withdrew it. "Your firm, Osei and Lim. Your lobby renewal is up next quarter, in my building." The blood left Daniel's face by degrees. He gathered his coat, mumbled something about a meeting, and was gone within the minute. The bell hadn't finished ringing before Zuri rounded the counter, furious. "What was that?" "A conversation." "That was a threat. He's a customer, a friend. He asked me to dinner, which is allowed because—" She stopped, breathing hard. "Because I'm not yours, Ji-suk. You tore up my eviction, you handled Beck, and I'm grateful, but somewhere along the way you decided I came with the block, like the crooked shelf, like something you acquired." The words landed. She watched them land, watched something shudder behind his eyes, the way a house goes dark, room by room. "Is that what you think this is?" he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what this is. You never say. You show up every Friday, you count my heartbeats, you frighten off anyone who—" Her voice cracked. "Say what you want from me, just once, plainly." And there it was, the one thing Han Ji-suk, who moved banks before breakfast, had never learned to do. The silence stretched. His jaw worked. Then he set the week's payment on the counter, precise as always. "The flowers are approved," he said, and walked out. Zuri didn't cry until the car pulled away. Then she sat down among the roses and did, hating him, hating herself more, because the shop had never felt small when he was in it, and now it felt enormous and hollow, like a Friday with nothing in it. Across the city, Do-hyun watched his boss stare through a wall of glass and rain, and said carefully, "Sir, go back." "She's right," Ji-suk said. "That's the problem." Baek Sang-chul had lost his licenses, his buildings, and his pride. And a man with nothing left to lose does foolish things, like walking into a flower shop at closing time. Zuri was locking the register when she smelled the soju. Baek stood inside the door, disheveled, holding a contract and a cheap lighter. "Sign the shop over," he said, flicking the flame. "Backdated. Tonight. You cost me everything. The least you owe me is the corner lot. Sign, or I burn it with both of us inside. I genuinely don't care anymore which." Her hands went cold. Behind the counter, half hidden by ribbon spools, sat the small button Do-hyun had installed in the spring for deliveries. She'd rolled her eyes at it then. She pressed it now. "Okay," she said, sliding the contract closer, uncapping a pen slowly, spelling her own name wrong, starting over, asking about clauses, stalling. "If I sign, you leave my street forever." The door didn't burst open. It simply opened, bell chiming its ordinary chime, and Han Ji-suk walked in as calmly as any Friday, except his tie was gone, his breathing was wrong, and his eyes, when they found the lighter near her chrysanthemums, went to a place Zuri had never seen. Sang-chul, almost gentle, put out the flame. "Stay back, You'll what?" Ji-suk stepped between Zuri and the lighter, unhurried, hands loose at his sides, while a dozen men filled the street behind the glass. "Look outside. There is no version of tonight where you win. There's a version where you go to prison for extortion and arson. My lawyers are enthusiastic. And a version where you take the plane ticket in Do-hyun's pocket, the severance I am irrationally offering, and disappear to your sister's place in Busan. Choose in the next 5 seconds. You are standing far too close to her." The lighter clicked shut. Baek's whole body folded. He was weeping as Do-hyun walked him out, pathetic, finished, gone. The shop went quiet, just stems and ribbon and 2 people breathing. "You pressed the button," Ji-suk said. "You put a panic button in my shop. I put 4. He crossed to her then, and his composure, the famous bulletproof calm of Han Ji-suk, cracked open like ice in spring. His hands framed her face, thumbs at her jaw, checking her over as if the fire had actually happened. 3 minutes. It took me 3 minutes to get here, and it was the longest. He stopped. Started again, plainly, the way she'd once demanded. "I love you. That's what this is. What it's been since you handed a stranger chrysanthemums and told him where love goes. You don't belong to me, Zuri. It's worse than that. I belong to you." Zuri's laugh came out half a sob. She fisted both hands in his collar. "Took you long enough," she whispered, and kissed him first. The kiss lasted until the streetlights came on, and when it finally broke, Han Ji-suk did something no one in Seoul would have believed. He laughed. It was a young sound, unpracticed, and Zuri decided immediately she would spend the rest of her life collecting it. He pulled her closer by the apron strings, forehead to hers, and murmured, "Fridays are no longer enough." "You're here every day anyway." "Officially, then." What followed was the softest season of both their lives. He learned to trim stems, badly. She learned that the most dangerous man in the city fell asleep in exactly 4 minutes if she read aloud to him, his head heavy in her lap among the ribbon spools. He met her mother over video call and was, to Zuri's astonishment, charming and visibly nervous. She met his world at a single dinner where hardened men fell over themselves refilling her glass, because everyone understood. This woman was the boss's whole heart. The night he asked, he did it in the shop after closing, kneeling on the same floorboards where she'd once knelt gathering broken tulips. No speech. He'd never been good at speeches. Just a ring, his grandmother's, and one sentence. Grief means the love had somewhere to go. Marry me, and it never has to go anywhere else. She said yes before he finished. They married in spring, in a garden Ji-seok bought and had planted with every flower she'd ever refused to let die. Do-hyun cried and denied it. Her mother danced with 3 lieutenants. Daniel Osei sent a very cautious congratulations card, which Ji-seok, now secure, found genuinely funny. 2 years on, the corner shop had doubled. Ji-seok had quietly acquired the unit next door as a wedding gift, then endured a full week of Zuri scolding him for it before she started sketching plans for the expansion. The crooked shelf stayed crooked. The radio still played one station, and every Friday without fail, the black sedan pulled to the curb and the whole street smiled instead of holding its breath, because the neighborhood had long since learned that the man who ran half of Seoul spent his Friday afternoons holding a watering can. On one such Friday, Zuri caught him inspecting the peonies with fierce concentration and slid her arms around him from behind, her ring catching the light, his hand covering hers immediately, automatically, the way it always did now. "Approved?" she asked. Ji-seok turned in her arms and looked at her the way he had since a funeral morning years ago, like she was the sentence he never put down. "Everything," he said, and kissed her in the window for the whole street to see. Approved for life. The bell above the door chimed. The city went on without them, and in a flower shop on Hana Street, love had somewhere to go, and stayed.